Hi, and welcome to X-Ray the Panda. I'm Paul. Today, we have two topics to go over. The first topic is the fact and reasons of China ending its lockdown. Before COVID, Shanghai was the most busy city in China, bustling with shoppers, tourists, and workers. Now, under the strict lockdown, grass grows from cracks in the road, soccer pitches have grass taller than a grown man, and parks are hauntingly silent. According to the Shanghai Healthcare Commission, the number of positive cases has gradually declined. As a result, the vice director from the Healthcare Commission announced that we've effectively controlled the pandemic on the society aspect, with the trace fading away from the virus. This is a positive trend. However, the risk of a rebound is still there, so we still have to remain vigilant. But how many actually believe the official number of COVID cases that were announced by the Chinese government? For example, on May 10th, each district of Shanghai made an oath on their goal of COVID cases. Huangpu district set their goal at 300 maximum. The number they announced for that day was 248. Pudong New district set the goal at 260. They announced 250. Jing'an district's goal was 197. They announced 196. Boshan district's goal, 196. The announcement of positive cases was 132. Hongkou district was 106, while they announced 100 cases. Shuhui district, 126, announcing 62 new cases. Minhang district set their goal at 91 and announced 72. As we can see, this virus is rather obedient that in no case did it dare to break through the limit goal set by the government. During the lockdown, the Shanghai pandemic prevention workers have been using heavy equipment to open residents' doors and break into private properties to sterilize. From the videos, we can see one worker is holding an electronic cutting machine just to open the door. Then in front of another door, another worker is violently smashing the door. After they broke in, everywhere was spread with the pungent disinfectant fluid, which also would bleach everything. What's more horrifying was they have also sprayed it on at least one baby. Not only have they emptied the buildings in the community, but also the villages in Shanghai couldn't escape. More than 100 policemen under orders to empty the entire village by dragging away each one of them in quarantine. This looks similar to the White Terror. People describe them as the White Guards, related to the Red Guards back in the 1960s during the Cultural Revolution in China. Some straight out called them robbers. One of the most popular TV presenters of Shanghai, who's also an artist, stated that his home has more than 10,000 pieces of ancient books and cultural relics. Many of them are high quality, and even some of them are the only existing copies. Out of desperation, he has said, if there's anyone who breaks into his apartment to sterilize, he would jump out from his window to commit suicide. Here, a pandemic prevention police officer is tying up a man with tape from his ankle all the way up to the chest. We don't know what crime he is to have committed, but to be tied up like this, he couldn't even stand up, not to mention to walk. Finally, he was dragged and tossed into the police car. Various punishments have been carried out as if to domesticate the Shanghai people, such as if one tests COVID positive, the whole community will be locked down. But apparently, this isn't far enough, as a conversation between a Shanghai resident and pandemic prevention worker has showed that by not complying to their policy, not only will the citizen be in trouble, but also 3 generations of their family. The resident declared his COVID test was negative, therefore the police have no right to take him to quarantine. Threats from the policemen were not only to punish him according to public security penalties, but also 3 generations of his family will be affected by his actions. The reply from a man was just as much a classic one, as he said, "Thank you, but I'm the last generation." Although this kind of penalty has existed throughout Chinese history, the current Chinese government has been applying this punishment on a small scale. The implication penalty the Shanghai government imposed to punish those who don't want to comply with the anti-epidemic measures have raised much anxiety and roused anger among the Shanghai people. The loss from the lockdown in Shanghai, as most people know, are the secondary disasters that happen to the people who live in Shanghai or around the city. However, the impact of other aspects which seem to have little to do with Shanghai are still enormous. A cardiologist said that all the cardiac surgeries have been postponed because of the Shanghai lockdown. As all the input artificial blood vessels are overstocked in Shanghai, many lives will be paid as the cost of the lockdown. The Chinese-made artificial blood vessels can't meet the standard, as not only do they have too thick vascular walls, but they also leak blood. Therefore, the production stopped long ago. Now, all the artificial blood vessels completely rely on input products, along with other 90% of medical advanced material nationwide. The government used to declare that it would defeat the pandemic with the least price possible. But does the cost of life count as the least price? Studies show the number of cardiovascular and cerebrovascular patients is approximately 1/3 of a billion in China, and the number has been steadily increasing over the last 10 years. In 2020 alone, the number of patients who died from cardiovascular and cerebrovascular disease is about 4.57 million. The Shanghai government posted a statement that the lockdown will be terminated by the 1st of June, as they've achieved the zero policy goal at the social level. Just as 70 years ago, the Chinese Communist Party claimed they had accomplished the goal of eliminating the so-called four pests: flies, mosquitoes, mice, and cockroaches. So all these pests that were in China were clearly imported and that they were the other country's fault. But is it really possible to get rid of those? However, with the government truth credit bankruptcy, not many citizens really believe the lockdown will end. Some are saying, "Don't lie to me again. When it was March, the government said the lockdown would be lifted by April. Then in April, they said May. Now it's May, they say it will be lifted in June. Is this some kind of solitaire game?" Now the State Council issued a paper ending the Shanghai lockdown on May 18th. This seemingly excited news didn't cheer up the locals when some planned to go outside, but were stopped by the neighborhood committee with an unbelievable announcement that if people wish to go outside, the only exit is to go from the TV, as that's where they heard the news. Some businessmen fell into a state of anxiety as they didn't know how to explain to their clients that although the news says the lockdown has ended, the real fact is, it has not. They mocked this fact as all Chinese people know the Shanghai lockdown has been lifted, except for the Shanghai people themselves. Our second topic is the riot that happened in Beijing University. In Beijing, which has reported more than 1,000 infections in recent weeks, most restaurants and public spaces have been shut down, and millions face daily testing and work from home. The number one university in China is located in Beijing. Shanghai University received an emergency notification from higher-ups that by the next day, the university must enhance its control and forbid any takeout food delivery people to enter the campus. Outside epidemic prevention workers and basic guarantee staff, no one else is allowed to enter or exit the campus. Not only Shanghai University, but some other top universities in Beijing have also already started lockdowns. Why? On May 15th, a riot rose in Beijing University, starting an extremely unfair measure towards the students and various university staff. The school officials banned food deliveries and confined the students to their dorms while fencing the university cafeteria and the only outdoor garden away from the students. Yet, at the same time, the teaching and administration staff not only have the freedom of entering and exiting the campus, but also have full access to the university cafeteria and the garden themselves, which was supposed to be the public relaxing area of the students. Around 8 p.m. at night, the construction noise of a wall, similar to the Berlin Wall, divided the campus with one small public garden area for the students, but the rest of the much bigger part of the garden along with the cafeteria to the teaching and administrative staff, whose number is far less. This unapproved action set students to anger, and hundreds went outside their dormitory and chanted in protest. Around 10:30 that night, while the student protesters were crowded on the street and a corridor on the second floor, one of the school leaders came to talk to the students through a megaphone. The students, however, weren't convinced. 10 minutes later, the vice principal finally showed up, shouting himself hoarse to promise to resolve the problem and guarantee students study life and daily life with the school's authority. First, he said, "I won't leave here without the problem being solved." The students then replied with, "Well, we won't leave either." Then the vice principal tried to add, "I'll stay until the problem is solved tonight. I'm going to inspect each dorm and interview every student." Someone then shouted back, "What do you do at night in the girls' dormitory?" At this moment, a sudden loud sound came from the Berlin Wall behind the vice principal. Turned out, one student was trying to dismantle one of the pieces of the fencing wall. A wave of claps and cheers came from some students. Meanwhile, the university's leaders and guards turned around in stunned astonishment. Very quickly, the male student who was dismantling the wall was dragged out. In order to avoid provoking the students further, the vice principal announced to the students, "Let my actions speak for myself. I'll dismantle this wall first," while at the same time telling them to go back to their dormitories in an ordinary fashion. Students questioned back with, "How do we make sure you won't have the wall built at night secretly?" Instead of answering the question, the vice principal told the students to put down their phones to stop recording in the name of protecting the school's reputation. But it was asked again with, "Who can protect us then?" by the students. Both parties seemed to be in a stalemate. By 10:50, a student who appeared to be brave informed everyone of his name, major, and grades, suggesting to talk to school leaders privately under his guidelines in a smaller group. However, his suggestions were not exactly what the majority of the students had asked in the first place, as he proposed to share a bit more areas of the garden with the students and add more school buses, which appeared more like a way of dividing the students by these twisted requirements, while in the cover of representing the students. By 11 o'clock, teachers of each department had started to check every dorm to find out who wasn't in their dorms. After the crowd slowly dismissed, though, a small group of students remained, discussing in front of the building till after midnight. Fearing retaliation, student representatives asked the school officials to sign a paper to not investigate those who came out to protest. It said the school officials didn't even give the students' representatives a nice attitude and refused to sign the paper. By 1 a.m., some students revealed that their instructor of political control is encouraging students to accuse and expose those who attend the protest based on the pictures and videos among students. Unfortunately, some students have already been pointed out and identified. On Monday, reporters saw 2 police vans parked outside a seemingly quiet campus. The incident was rapidly censored on China's Twitter-like Weibo platform, where many evoked memories of the country's May 4th movement, mass protests by students back in the year 1919. Beijing University was also the birthplace of the Tiananmen Square protests in 1989. But the difference was the Tiananmen Square protests were more of a patriotic act. Unlike this time, it's for personal freedom. This ends our video for today. Please subscribe, share, and like, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.